needs to resign or be fired.
Wow. Mark, do you agree?
I do. I mean, it's baffling to me the amount, how committed he is to looking at Donald Sterling through this other lens. I mean, this isn't a momentary slip up. This isn't like where someone accidentally says the N-word, if that's possible. It's not someone who makes an inappropriate remark. This is someone who has a long history, not just of racist remarks, but racist practices in his business, in his personal life, in everyday life. I mean, this is a deep thing. And for him to suggest somehow that we don't know what's in his heart, that's absurd to me. It makes me wonder if there's some sort of connection between the NAACP and of LA, not the national chapter, but the local chapter, and Donald Sterling in terms of some kind of financial connection, some kind of, I mean, the whole relationship is bizarre, and those comments only highlight just how bizarre.
Okay, you talk about financial connections. Well, tax records obtained by a citizen audit show that the LA NAACP chapter has received $45,000 from Sterling. Money,
ding, ding.
It says it will now return, LZ. It's going to return the money.
Yeah, and I believe the quote said that it was an insufficient amount or insignificant amount and they're going to return it. Well, if it's so insignificant, why don't you take it from that racist to begin with? Listen, we all, for the most part, somewhere in our lives sell out. If you're a liberal and you're driving like an SUV and you care about the environment, you're selling out. We don't want child labor laws, but we'll buy cheap Nikes, understanding where they come from. We're selling out. So we all sell out to a certain degree. But the NAACP, the advancement of colored people, there is nothing that has hurt African Americans in this country more than the inability to get proper housing and education. And what Donald Sterling did interfered with our advancement of both. Not being able to get good housing and not being able to be in school districts where our children can be educated. How is that to be overlooked? They were bought off. And once again, that president needs to be fired or resign. And then we can begin talking about where we go from there as a local chapter. And one more thing, I'm not letting the national chapter off the hook either. I know they want to characterize this as a local chapter, but this is LA. This is the second largest city in the country. This isn't some podunk town that decided to do it on their own. The national office had to have been aware or should have been aware of what its second largest chapter was doing.
I suspect they were asleep at the wheel. I mean, over the last 3 or 4 years, I've seen the NAACP make a shift, quite honestly, under the leadership of Ben Jealous before he left, back toward advocacy, back toward hardcore progressive issues, which is something they'd abandoned for decades, toward more wealth-building bourgeois middle-class sort of ideals. And so to see the NAACP on a national level moving in a good direction and to see this at the local level in such a bad direction, I think there's a gap. I'm not letting them off the hook, but I think it's that they didn't know rather than that they knew and were complicit. Neither is excusable, but I think there is a difference, and I think that's what happened.
Okay, so LZ, I'll lay this. I suspect I know what you'll say, but I'll lay this on you anyway. The National NAACP just announced it has requested a meeting with the NBA commissioner to discuss, quote, the influence and impact of racism in the league. Yet you have the local chapter of the NAACP saying, oh, we're good Christians. We need to forgive Mr. Sterling and work with him in the future.
Well, once again, this is not breaking news. We're just being reminded. I understand, I actually was giving a lecture last night. I teach at Northwestern University, and I was talking to my students about what was happening in 2003 and 2004 that prevented the media from really taking hold of the story in the first place. We had the Iraq War. We were still reeling from 9/11. So you can see why we were distracted. But that doesn't give us an excuse to pretend like this is breaking news to either the public or the NAACP, whose job it is to stay on top of things like this. But I'm also looking at the National Basketball Player Association's their professional organization, their union, because their union should have been aware of this, and every single time that those players were willing to sit out over their contracts and not bring up Donald Sterling, you're also culpable in that. As you can tell, I'm very heated by this because people are trying to pretend like this is breaking news when actually we let this pass for over a decade.
You know what it is, Elsie? We only like sexy forms of racism. We like the rabid, foaming at the mouth racist where someone's on the phone talking to their girlfriend about not letting black people at the game. Systematically denying black people access to housing is definitely far more damaging than the phone call he made. Not being able to get access to quality public education is far more damaging. Even the Elgin Baylor lawsuit is evidence of a far more damaging pattern of denying people access to proper wages. That kind of stuff is what we should be caring about, but we only run when racist stuff happens caught on TMZ tapes, and we should be upset about this, but there's far more systemic stuff we need to be worried about, and that's why I'm challenging the players to not just flip their jerseys inside out, which is a weak form of protest, but to actually have a general strike here, to actually stop playing, to actually commit themselves to pulling out of these games until the NBA makes a definitive decision on Donald Sterling if they don't do so this afternoon in Adam Silver's press
But
conference.
Elsie, doesn't that hurt the
you.
players?
I mean,
why should the payers have to pay for these racist remarks?
But they're not
paying for this racist remarks. They are protesting these racist remarks. It's so. I heard someone actually compare turning their jerseys inside out to 1968 Mexico City, and I wanted to jump through the television and strangle that person because there is no comparison between players turning their jersey inside out, millionaires turning their jersey inside out in 2014 where the country supports them, and what those two gentlemen did in 1968 and being vilified when they returned back to this country. What those players did, whether they were putting on black socks or making tweets like, oh man, that's messed up, that's really, really weak. And the truth of the matter is, if you were that upset, you would have said something in 2003, 2004 as a union, and you definitely would be making sure that Adam Silver did something swiftly by not playing. Not just the Clippers, but the league.
The whole league. It only works if the whole league doesn't play. If just the Clippers don't play, the only one who wins is Steph Curry and Mark Jackson and the Golden State Warriors. You need the whole league to say, we're not going to play. We have to take the profit out of white supremacy. We have to take the profit out of racism.
Actually, you don't need the whole league. You need one prominent player. Let's say LeBron James refuses to play. What effect would that have on the NBA?
No, but here's the problem with that. Then we get back into the Disney narrative, right, where LeBron becomes a hero and we make movies about him in 20 years and he becomes a legend, and that's awesome. But we've taken no money out of the owners' pockets. The owners lose money when there's no game. You can have the Miami Heat will not only play without LeBron James, they'll probably win, at least in the second round against Toronto or Brooklyn. What you need right now is the whole league not to play so that those cable TV contracts don't have any money, so that the stands are empty, so that no one makes money. And when the owners don't make money and they start caring about green because they don't care about black, then you see change. Then Adam Silver's hand is forced. Because remember, Adam Silver isn't the boss of the owners. The owners are the boss of Adam Silver.
Right.
They're only going to he's going to do what they allow him to do. And the only thing we have at our disposal as people who are fighting this protest is a general strike. Everybody sit out, then they have to get rid of him.